Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Dharma Sunday at Wonderwell. And is that too loud, do you think? It's a little echoey, but you can hear. So, okay. Just if it gets too much, then. Can you guys all hear me online? Yes. Some of you need it loud, okay? Yep. Is that okay? Okay. Wonderful. So, welcome. Welcome to Dharma Sunday. I haven't seen this many people in the room at once in a long time. And at Wonderwell, it's really wonderful. So, a beautiful fall day. And for those of you who are new to Wonderwell, we do a Dharma Sunday every week, actually. But usually we try once a month to have what we call a hybrid Dharma Sunday, which means in person and online. And the other Sundays of the month are usually just online. But if you aren't aware of that, then you're welcome to come anytime, any Sunday, in person or online. And the format for the morning is that we'll start with some practice together until around 10:45, and we'll take a 15-minute break and then come back, and I'll share some thoughts with you and try to leave time for conversation. And then there'll be for those of you at Wonderwell, we have a potluck lunch. So even if you didn't bring anything, you are absolutely 100% welcome to stay. There's always plenty. And say hello, get to know people. It's a great time just to connect and continue our cultivation of community, which is so much what we need today. Communities. Well, I think I'm awake. Communities of care and of finding others who are interested in awakening in the same way that we are. So please stay if you can. And everyone at home, we'll miss you. So we're going to start with a prayer or two. And thank you. I don't have one. So for our Zoom hosts, we're going to start with the prayer of refuge. And then we'll do this pure perception and bodhicitta, and then the four immeasurable aspiration. Well, maybe we won't do that one. Maybe we'll do Jigme Lingpa's bodhicitta prayer this time, which I love. And that's on page 2. So page 1 and page 2. And, this is to give my little spiel about taking refuge, which is that this is a little practice, even though we're actually just chanting it, but it's a little practice that is a reminder, really a reminder that one thing we can do in this particular time to cultivate a place of ease and simplicity and care in our lives is to cultivate sources of refuge. And refuge meaning just a place of beingness where we can relax and feel held and have a little bit of a sense of sanctuary from the challenges that we're all facing. And so when you take refuge in this way, it's, the traditional formulation is to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And really all of that is a kind of constellation of interconnectedness. So we're taking refuge in our awakened essence, which is, in this case, represented by the Buddha, somebody who actualized that recognition, that realization, or reawoke that memory of who he really was, which is something that we're doing. on our path. And um, and then in the Dharma, which is really the flow of wisdom and compassion that is always um, surrounding us, both from the teachings of wise beings who have come before us, but also from the manifestations of the world around us. So the Dharma of the rain, the Dharma of the leaves falling, the Dharma of the cold air. We're always in this field of communication. And so taking refuge in the Dharma is remembering that that is also holding us if we are remember to open our hearts and our awareness to notice that those communications are constantly happening. And then taking refuge in the Sangha is what I just described. It's really taking refuge in the field of interconnectedness that involves all of us humans, but also involves the more than human world, that we are in communion and in connection with all beings, with the whole living world, including the trees, which from that perspective are sentient, responding to a note that came to me from Brianne earlier today. So taking refuge then is really a way of just positioning ourselves in a place of sanctuary and ease and simplicity. So we'll take refuge, and then there's this little chant, pure perception in bodhicitta, which is really a acknowledgement to oneself that we are in the process of reminding ourselves of remembering who we really are, that we are already awakened. We've just sort of forgotten that critical fact. And then this prayer, bodhicitta prayer by Jigme Lingpa on page 2 is, it's actually this, we could do the whole Dharma Sunday just on this one prayer, but I'm just going to say briefly, it's a acknowledgement of confusion and the way that we forget over and over again who we really are. And it's an aspiration to return to waking up back into the truth of our essence, our Buddha nature, our awakened essence. And that when we do that, we release the energy of our being as a stream of compassion and love into the world. So it's a gorgeous little prayer. We'll do that too. And obviously the first words in that first prayer are Tibetan. So there's a little tune that goes with that. And then we'll do the English. Sanjay Chudang Sochi Chonam La Changche Pardu Dani Chapsuchi Daki Jinso Jipe Sonam Chi Drola Penchir Sanjay Druparsho. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we go for refuge until enlightened. By the power of generosity and the other perfections, may we realize Buddhahood for the benefit of all. I and all beings are primordially Buddha. Knowing this to be true, I am aligned with supreme enlightened mind. I don't know if we have this one as a slide. So if we don't, everybody, I'm sorry. Oh, no, maybe, yeah, we do. Yay. Okay. Ho, mesmerized by the sheer variety of perceptions, which are like illusory reflections of the moon in water, Beings wander endlessly astray in samsara's vicious cycle, in order that all may find comfort and ease in the luminosity and all-pervading space of the true nature of their minds. I unleash the immeasurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity of awakened mind, the heart of bodhicitta. This morning, the practice that we will do together actually harkens back to the beginning of my practice days. And it's a very, very simple practice of shamatha, um, but which is also a practice of vipassana. So shamatha means a practice of resting in peace and of training our capacity to stay in the present moment. And vipassana means the practice of seeing deeper into the truth of our essential being. And often they come together in any meditation that we're doing. These elements are part of almost every meditation practice. But this is a practice that just works with very simply with the breath, because one of the things I'm going to talk about this morning later on is the power of the breath. So I'm going to just give you the heads up of what we're going to do, and then we'll do it. But we'll just first settle with the body, connect to the body, and then connect to the breath. And the practice is simply to bring your attention to the feeling of the breath as it flows into the body. So you might want to just even notice the feeling of the breath as it moves in through your nose or mouth and out through your nose or mouth. And so inhale and then exhale. And at the very end of the exhale, you're just going to, for a moment, have a sense that you are letting go of everything and just expanding into space. Kind of like releasing a bird from the prow of a ship. And the bird just flies off into the sky. It's very brief, right? Because then your next breath will come and you will breathe back in again. But as on the exhale, then at the end, just releasing into space. And there's a little bit of a gap then, just a very, very small gap between the end of the exhale and the beginning of the next inhale. And it's in that gap that there's the possibility of recognizing the inseparability between outer and inner space. That actually we are not separate. So just don't think about it too much, but just when you get to the end of the exhale, just kind of have this sense of letting go. And again, don't make a big deal out of it, just letting go. And then when the breath naturally wants to flow in, you follow it back in and then out again. So you're not altering your breath if you can help it. Not that easy, but try not to, get into some like, okay, just try to stay with the natural rhythm of your own breath, because it's just a very brief moment of just like, boop, let go, and then flow back in again. Okay, very simple, and not necessarily easy, but simple. So we'll start with just, again, allowing your body to settle into a comfortable position of some sort. If you need to stand, you can stand or lie down. And we'll begin actually with eyes open for this practice. So you want your spine to be upright, but relaxed. And your your eyes are open, and you can rest your gaze either straight out in front of you in the space in front of you, or you can rest your gaze on the floor in front of you, a few foot or two in front of you. And the key thing about the gaze here is to keep your gaze very soft and even unfocused, because you're not staring or fixing your gaze on any object. You're just opening your eyes enough to let in some light, some color. If there's movement that occurs in the field of vision, just allowing that to happen without narrowing in on it. So if you have glasses, you can take them off because the temptation is to really focus on something. And remembering that, in a way, what you're doing is you're gazing out from the back of your head. So letting the eyes be very relaxed and soft. Let's just try that for a moment first. It's almost like having the eyes open is just a way to remind yourself that you are part of everything around you. So just try that first. Just sort of a sense of that softness of the eyes and the kind of panoramic feeling of being present in the space wherever you are. It's really an encouragement for your awareness to be what is seeing here. Kind of panoramic gaze of awareness. And at the same time, just noticing the groundedness and the weight of your body as you're sitting here. This body is what's holding you right here in this present moment. So just giving it a little bit of attention, you could feel the connection that is always there between your body and the earth, held to the earth by gravity, always connected. So before you start bringing any attention to the breath, just take a few minutes to be a body that is open and aware and present. If you're getting carried away by your thinking, allow that sense of the body's groundedness, the sense of being openly aware from within the body, bring you back to this moment. Let those thoughts just ground down into the earth. Now begin to become aware of the feeling of your breath, just as it is. It could be fast or slow or deep or shallow, it doesn't matter. Just let your attention rest with the feeling of the breath as it flows into the body and as it flows out of the body. Do that for a couple of minutes before we start releasing at the end of the exhale, just to ground ourselves in the flow, the rhythm of our breath. And remember that your breath doesn't need any help from you. Your body knows how to breathe all by itself. So see if you can let this breath breathe you. And then when you feel ready, you can add in this little detail of just releasing, letting go at the end of the exhale. Very brief little moment of setting yourself free into the space. That little moment of letting go at the end of the exhale, it's a little moment of releasing all effort, all striving, all fabrication, letting go of thinking, just opening, releasing, relaxing. If you find yourself getting tangled up, you can drop it all and just come back to the body, come back to the gaze, and then when you're ready, start again. We'll have a 15-minute break and be back at 11. And I'll just ask you to keep silence during the break, just so that we can all return. So this morning, I'm going to continue a series of presentations that I've been giving over the last couple months that I've been calling forest teachings. And they're a way of, I hope, sharing some thoughts about what it would mean to return to full awareness of our interconnectedness, our inseparability from the living world as a source of healing, as a source of remembering, for remembering who we really are and why we're here. Um, there's this notion that we are always in relationship with the living world. We're in relationship with ourselves internally, and we're in relationship with all living beings. But we've been conditioned really to tune that out on some level, to stay contracted into a sense of personal self. And for such a long time that it's become a habit, a very strong habit. And but in an effort to consider sources for how we might turn back into our world with a new perspective, which hopefully could give rise to other ways of being and acting besides those that we are seeing unfolding all around us, operating out of a different kind of paradigm. And these are just some of the ways I've been thinking into that. And I mentioned this for those of you who've been here for the weekend. We were talking on Friday evening about getting outside the box of our habitual thought-based movement through the world. That so much of how we respond to our world is coming out of the same paradigm that the problems we're facing have arisen from. And what if we could operate from a different perspective? So that's where this notion of these forest teachings arose from. And part of that is also beginning to recognize that the Dharma, the truth of how things actually are, the word Dharma means truth. It doesn't mean just the teachings of the Buddha, although the Buddha's teachings are considered to be Dharma, a truth about how things are. That was one framework for understanding and exploring the truth of how things are. But there's a vaster Dharma, actually, that is the Dharma of the living world, the Dharma of aging, the Dharma of illness, the Dharma of death, the Dharma of our life unfolding in all of the variety of ways that it unfolds. And the true Dharma isn't really found in books or texts, but it's found in our lived experience of this life, and it's found in the rivers and the trees and the lightning and the rain. And when we can really allow ourselves to start to listen to that Dharma, to hear that Dharma, then the whole world, really is becoming our guide, our teacher back to who we really are. So I titled this morning's forest teaching, Breathing with Reverence. And I want to explore how this notion of breathing with reverence as um, a way of positioning ourselves to hear a different kind of truth, a different kind of compassion, a different kind of wisdom that is not being communicated to us through words, even though I'm sitting here talking to you. Um, in the Buddhist tradition, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there are two lineages of teachings that are considered to be non-dual teachings. And one of them is the Dzogchen path, which probably a lot of people have heard of. It's a kind of big buzzword these days, Dzogchen. And the other is Mahamudra, the Mahamudra path. And in the Mahamudra path, they describe four different kinds of teachers that we can relate to and learn from. So there's a lineage teacher, which is usually somebody in an embodied form of some kind, human. Then there's the written teachings that I was just describing before, you know, like the teachings that are written down that we can read and we can listen to. But then there's this notion of what they call the experiential guru, or the guru of the whole world, the guru that is of the phenomenal world, of the living world. And that at some point on our path, we let go of some of the, you know, the assists that have been helping us along our path, and we open ourselves to receive the teachings of the phenomenal world, the living world. So the whole world becomes our teacher, and every aspect of this life becomes a teacher from which we can awaken. And then really the ultimate guru, so the fourth guru is what they call the ultimate guru. And this is the realization that actually the most profound primordial wisdom lies within our own essential nature. And that this whole path is the whole, a spiritual path of any kind really is a way of returning to that essential nature, to remembering who we really are and why we came here. And that at some point we begin to trust that in this dimension of our being that is always present and is awake and aware and luminous and loving. And that becomes the primary guru. So I've been thinking about, well, what sort of receptivity would we want to cultivate in order to invite this interconnectedness back into our lives, this recognition of our inseparability as a way to remember who we are. And so I was thinking of this phrase that I'm calling breathing with reverence as a state or a stance or a positioning of oneself in a state of receptivity. Because if we're not receptive to these unfoldings of wisdom and compassion and that are all around us, we're not going to hear anything. So how do we cultivate a state of receptivity where whatever our ideas are about how things are set to the side a little bit? Because very often, you know, we think we have a lot of thoughts about how things are, a lot of beliefs about how things are. And sometimes those get in the way. They create a filter between us and a kind of direct, raw experience of the truth of things as they actually are. So first I want to talk a bit about the breath, and then I'll talk about this notion of reverence. You might think at this point in the Buddhist path that how much more could you actually say about the breath? It's like breath is like a topic that continues to be explored and comes up. But the truth is that for most of us, you know, we're moving so fast in our lives that the breath is more, it's just an afterthought. You know, we don't really pay much attention to our breath. unless we're, exerting ourselves really heavily, or um, we get sick and, have a sinus infection or a chest cold or something, and then breath, we can become more conscious of our experience of breathing. But in many ways, the breath has become sort of like a background function of really, even you could say, in the service of our productivity, right? That it's what fuels us to move along through this life. And that in so many ways, we're being instructed in our culture to master something, to measure something, to manipulate something, whether it's our body or it's our environment or it's our job or it's our relationships or it's our time or it's our breath, our breath. And there's something about that relationship to the breath where it becomes nothing more than just the fuel that keeps us alive. So it's a sort of result of having inherited this view of the world that is treating mind and matter and self and other and spirit and nature as fundamentally separate, right? And the consequences of that are pretty obvious all around us. The collapse of our climate, the loneliness that so many people are experiencing, the mental and emotional exhaustion and fear that's we're all tuned into by virtue of just being here on this planet. So there's this sense that maybe our breath, which really is like the most immediate expression of our belonging, actually, the most immediate expression of our belonging, it's become kind of unnoticed, shallow, constricted. A lot of us don't even know how to breathe deeply anymore. I know I don't. I mean, I sit down sometimes or I come into a breath work session. Recently, I've been sort of curious about breath work. And it's like, wow, I mean, my breath is kind of like from here up. A deep breath is like, whoa, a whole different thing. And it's sort of a mirror, I think, this relationship to the breath that's so instrumental in a way, is an illustration in a way, in a sense of, or maybe a way of mirroring this culture that has forgotten how to really listen. Um, so this notion of turning back to the breath is an invitation, I hope, to recognize that the breath isn't just some sort of technique of self-regulation, but it's a sacred exchange with the living world. When we breathe, we are entering into, from the moment we take our first breath, we are entering into this sacred exchange with the living world. And that this breath is actually a conduit to our innate wholeness, to the part of us that has always been present, it's never been lost. This natural state that I'm talking about, this nature of who we really are, our vastness and our wakefulness, our alertness, our luminosity, and our lovingness, our compassion. The breath is a conduit back to that, and that little practice that we did this morning is a way of playing with that. That when you let go at the end of the exhale, you're releasing into the space of everything else. And the breath is one of the most powerful ways of reminding ourselves that there is no real separation between outer and inner space, outer and inner air. When I was first meditating, we would have month-long practice sessions called datans, where that practice was what we did every single day, all day long, from 7 in the morning until 9 at night. And there'd be one talk in the evening, and the rest of the day, that all day long. You get exquisitely bored. But it's very powerful, actually. And I was so inspired by, after I did a few of those, that I did a 6-week solo retreat up in the mountains where I just did that every day. And it was one of the most profound retreats I ever did. So simple, but quite amazing. So, breath really is, it is, I mean, it is, we can't deny, it's the most basic aspect of our lives. Without breath, we would not be here. It's key to our survival. Um, and our breath is always, but what we don't notice at a certain point is that actually our breath is always in harmony with, on some level, with the rhythms of the earth, the movements of the earth, the breath of the earth. And in the same way that we feel our own breath, we can feel the breath of the world. We can feel the wind on our skin and the air moving across our bodies. So the world it's breathing alongside us, and it's inviting us into this sacred relationship, living relationship. And then in the Buddhist tradition, I want to just explore a little bit the role of the breath in Buddhism, since this is a Buddhist center. I'm supposed to keep talking about that somehow. Find myself floating off into other sort of forms of Dharma, but in the Buddhist tradition, right, the breath is not just understood as a bodily function, although of course it is that, but it's a method that we use to soften the efforting, the energy that we put into striving to make something happen, to wake up, to transcend our suffering, to concentrate our minds. If used properly in meditation, it's a method that helps to soften that focus, that striving mentality that we tend to come to our practice with. We don't tend to leave that out back at home when we start, or in the other room when we start practicing. And it's an encouragement to relax into simply being, just being as we are, moment to moment. And when we learn slowly to consciously relax with the breath, to start to let the breath breathe us. If you've ever had that moment happen in your practice where you realize that you were no longer having to pay attention specifically to the breath, but that the body was just breathing you. It's tremendously relaxing and easeful experience, very easeful. Like when you go into deep sleep, and your body is just breathing, and the body is completely relaxed and open. So if we practice relaxing with the breath, it can start to open us into this sort of boundless space of presence, where everything is arising together all the time, arising in a kind of spontaneous harmony. So the breath is an invitation. When you work with the breath in meditation, it's an invitation to return to what is already whole, what has never been separated, the part of us that has never been separated. And not through striving, right? Not through efforting, but through attunement, through just a slight, like your whole system is a tuning fork, and you're attuning back into your own wholeness that is inseparable from everything else. So when we did that practice this morning, in that little second where you let go into this kind of spacious stillness and openness, there's an opportunity to experience how fragile the veil of separation is between the sense of I over here and world out there. It's very actually flimsy, this veil. And when the veil begins to lift, it actually reveals this web of interbeing that connects us to everything. So we're using the breath then as a vehicle, as a method, or a technique. I kind of like vehicle because it's carrying us into open awareness, into our own open awareness, um, which is a way of returning to who we really are and remembering that. Those two streams of teachings in the Buddhist tradition that I just mentioned, Mahamudra and Dzogchen, both of them are these um, lineages of non-duality. So they're encouragements and instructions and practices in how to return to a non-dual place, a place of inseparability, a place of innate wholeness. And there's a quote from Guru Rinpoche. Guru Rinpoche was the Padmasambhava. He was an 8th century Siddha, or sometimes they say sorcerer, but actually really he was just an advanced meditator with a lot of realization. And he is attributed with having brought these streams of the Buddhist teachings into Tibet in the 8th century and establishing them there at that time. And this is a quote from him. He says, "All things are your own mind. All things are your own heart mind. Seeing objects as external is a mistaken concept. Like a dream, they are empty of concreteness." And that can sound like some kind of denial of the living world. Like, oh, wait, there's nothing actually there. But it's really more of an invitation to recognize that what we think about what is there is not there. There's something else that is there instead, something that is empty of our thoughts. So it's an invitation actually to perceive reality differently, to engage with reality differently. That quote, as not separate from ourselves. It's an invitation to recognize this lack of separation that is always there. That the outer world is an expression of the same awakened awareness that we can discover within ourselves and on our path. So when we practice with the breath, like we did this morning, right, it's an act of remembering this fundamental interbeing that we are. To quote Thich Nhat Hanh, it's hard not to quote Thich Nhat Hanh, interbeing, but there's a loosening of this illusion of separation that leads to so much of our struggle when we work with the breath. So each breath that we take could be a bridge between this body and the living world, between the wind and the mind. That the trees are no longer surrounding us, but they include us. And when we start to experience that kind of connection, re-experience that kind of connection, when the rhythm of our own breath is echoing the rhythm of the breath of the forest, for example, then that awakens feelings of wonder, of awe, maybe, of curiosity. And then I'm using this word of reverence, which sounds like I don't know, I like that word. I like the word reverence because contrary to what we might think about reverence, reverence isn't about awe at something that is distant from us somehow, but it's a recognition of an intimacy with something that is shared. And the result of that recognition, then this experience of wonder, of reverence. So let me just say a few things about reverence now. that when we do experience something we might call reverence, and that could be wonder, it could be awe, it could be, actually the word comes from Latin reverentia, and it can mean awe, it can mean respect, it can mean honor, it can even mean to be afraid of, actually. Um, but when we do experience reverence in some form, um, there's an assumption within that of sacred relationship, or a recognition maybe of sacred relationship that we're embedded in. And when we position ourselves within that state of awe or wonder or reverence, we are opening ourselves to be receptive to that relationship. So it's a state of receptivity that is very powerful for transforming how we are in the world. You know, we think a lot of times that transformation is going to just be something that comes to us, but actually we have to generate from within ourselves a condition of openness or receptivity to that transformation, or it can't happen. You know, it's like the classic example of the pot that's turned upside down. It won't receive any liquid into it because it's not receptive to receiving what's coming. So when we bring this experience of reverence or wonder, even to how we approach ourselves, and our environments, of course, but then we're starting to open up that capacity. We all have that capacity. I'm sure every person in here could come up with a time when you experienced a sense of awe and wonder and reverence in some form, in some way, in some place, in some situation. And I think that when we cultivate our capacity to experience reverence or wonder, it's a way of, re-enchanting ourselves with the living world. And I think that's something we need to do. We live on this planet where plants can transform light into nutrients and oxygen, where snakes rebirth themselves by shedding their skins, where the trees are talking to each other. There's all kinds of scientific studies that show that now. Where bats see by sound waves. And, these amazing phenomena. And, just because science has kind of explained them in a number of ways doesn't mean they're any less mysterious and wondrous. So I think, in order to devote ourselves back to this planet, that we have to start by returning ourselves to a sense of wonder in our world. Because the more enchanting we find the world, the more we're going to remember how deeply interwoven and inseparable we are from it. The more we can hear what it has to share with us. And then reverence also has this dimension to it where it's about understanding something about how we're spiritually related to the living world. Because even though there's this, something about spiritual relatedness includes mystery. We come to spirituality, many of us, because there's some awareness we have that there is some sort of mystery to this life. We don't know everything. We had a beautiful conversation about this the other day, but not knowing, right? It's not knowing. Even though we've got all this insight into, through science, into the universe, there's still a whole lot that we really don't know. And even just, according to NASA, 95% of the universe is dark matter and dark energy. And we don't really know what those are. We don't know what those are. 95%. It's completely unknown to us. It's a mystery. And so part of cultivating reverence means humbling ourselves before the mystery of this life and this universe and this planet. The fact that every single snowflake is different, of the billions of them that come down, seeing this, the sacredness of that there's a dimension of our relationship to the living world that goes past our capacity to understand intellectually. We can only really stand there in wonder, actually, in the face of it. And then, there are all lots of religious parables and spiritual teachings that cling to these metaphors of light. So much about the light. But there we have 95% of the universe is dark matter, dark energy. And the dark, then, really the unknown, the not known, has just as much to offer us. I'm going to read you this little quote from Bayo Akomolafe about the dark, just because it's so beautiful. I can't help it. I have to read it to you. Turn toward the smoldering darkness whence you came, and thank her for shaping you, for scaring you, for wounding you, and defeating you, and shaking you. Because in her womb, you were thoroughly purged and made fresh for new glimpses of wonder. As you walk farther into the domineering light, the dark will bless you with a gift to remind you that you are not as contained or as limited as you think, that there is more to you than what meets the educated eye, that whatever you do, the whole universe does the same along with you, imitating you with a childish keenness, and that you are never, ever alone. So inviting this mystery into our field of experience and allowing ourselves to be humbled by the fact that we don't and can't ever really know much, actually. I'd say everything, but that's maybe pushing it. So that the notion of reverence includes not only awe and wonder, but it includes a kind of humility, humbling ourselves, being willing to bow down to something that's so much bigger than we are. And again, this is all in the service of cultivating this receptivity. Right? If we don't have humility, how can we possibly be receptive? If we think we know it all, we've got it all under control, there's no space for wonder or awe or opening ourselves to other forms of insight, other kinds of communication. In the Zen tradition, there's this phrase that not knowing is most intimate. And in that space where we acknowledge that we don't know everything, and maybe we don't know much of anything, that we can really feel into ourselves, we can feel into others, we can feel into the living world from a much fresher and newer and a more spontaneous place. And in this Dzogchen tradition, there's a word for this kind of newness and freshness that comes from the state of not knowing. And the Tibetan word is jenewa, jenewa, sort of meant to be onomatopoetic, poetic. In other words, there's something about the word that has a sound that is meant to elicit the same feeling, which is this feeling of being naked and pristine and fresh. And whether it works or not, jenewa. I like saying it though, jenewa. It's a state of being that is free from the conditioning mind, thinking mind, and is present in this moment of freshness and newness in every moment. So when we practice meditation, we could be cultivating this notion of reverence, this experience of wonder. And actually, maybe you've had the experience of being in retreat, and at some point you realize you're seeing things differently and you're hearing things differently. And there's a freshness to the same view that you've seen over and over again, or the same sense of yourself. And a lot of times I hear people talk about this, that they have this sense of like being back in a state of wonder, that how can this world be so beautiful? How could things be so um, available? So there's something about practicing that does cultivate our willingness and our receptivity to allow this full spectrum of our experience to open us into the more that we are. And then finally, I'll just say something about the sense of, when we deepen our sense of reverence for the living world, um, we start to know this word by a different name. And that name is love. So reverence is our one way to return to a deep love. The love that is, love is this amazing field of energy. And it's what binds together things that are seemingly separate. When you love somebody, you feel united with that other being. When you love the tree in your backyard, you feel connected to it. When you love your pet, you feel joined with that pet. Um, and love is something that lets us see the world with freshness, the same sense of freshness and newness. When we're in love, when we feel love, there's a freshness to our perception and our experience. So there's something about repairing our seemingly separated relationship with the world that is also requiring us to relearn how to love it, to really love it. And that includes, obviously, having to love ourselves, learning to love ourselves, um, and each other, and all of the species that we are surrounded by. So this little talk is basically just an invitation to notice that there are these moments, even if they're very brief, even if they're almost imperceptible, but these moments when our breath is reconnecting us. In fact, it's always doing that. But when it's, that the inhale is not just about oxygen and the exhale is not just about carbon dioxide, but they are a process of remembering. Our breath is a way of remembering. And, I feel like that sometimes when I'm out hiking by myself or I'm dancing in particular, that the breath starts to move my body in a way that I don't have to really pay attention to. And the feeling of the breath when you're moving in movement is, one way also to connect to that sense of being immersed in your environment, inseparable from it. So many different kinds of moments where our breath is a conduit for reminding us that we are woven in the fabric of reality, woven into it. So you could say that really our practice is to begin to recognize that the breath is not some sort of tool that we have to master on the path, but actually it's a doorway, right? It's a portal, it's an opening into the natural state, into who we really are. Um, and when we really breathe with reverence, then we can feel the world breathing back. we're breathing together. And it allows us to touch into this sacredness that is part of our every moment, part of our every experience. So each inhale could be a prayer, and each exhale a release into this vast unfolding mystery of the living world. So maybe if you want to, you could think about how the rise and fall of the breath is actually an invitation to remember who you really are, that you're not separate, that you are interwoven, that you're being breathed and held by this world all the time. And I'm going to end with a little poem by Rilke that I think just sort of sums it all up, actually. And then we can have some time for conversation. But so this is by Rilke. Ah, not to be cut off, not through the slightest partition, shut out from the law of the stars. The inner, what is it, if not intensified sky, hurled through with birds and deep with the winds of homecoming? I'll read it again. Ah, not to be cut off, not through the slightest partition shut out from the law of the stars. The inner, what is it, if not intensified sky, hurled through with birds and deep with the winds of homecoming? So we have about a little over 15 minutes, and I'd love to know if anyone had any questions or comments, and we can go back and forth between our Zoom folks and people here. Anyone want to share something? And I think, I'm not sure who the Zoom host is this morning, but maybe if you can, we have to unmute folks on Zoom too. I see Tamara though. We'll start with Tamara here and then see if there's anyone online. Do you see Tamara Rhiannon? She's here.
Thank you. My mind went to delivery room. When you have a delivery room, when you have either you are a mother or father or you are a clinician, and you notice that first breath of a child when it's being born, that's the reverence of the breathing, right? When you just, the life just kind of blooms up and the baby is living and entering the world.
Right.
I think it's a perfect example of the definition you were showing.
So yeah, that's gorgeous. Thank you so much. What a wonderful example. Is there anybody on Zoom?
No, we don't have anybody yet.
Okay. Parish.
Hello, my name's Parish, and I just love that talk. Thank you so much. And I was aware of not only the breath being this conduit and connective, as you so beautifully put it in many ways, but our eyes are those too. And to think about the fact that as I see anybody here, that really what's happening is what's on the outside is in on my retina, upside down, then being translated to my brain. And then I get to see. And cameras, I'm a photographer. Cameras are that too, that there is no, that it is an instrument, a box that is, it's essential primitive magic is just through a lens. What's outside is brought in. And I've always loved that as I try to practice my art, that in a sense, there is a dissolving boundary, as you've been saying, between external and internal through our eyes as well. I just wanted to offer that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Another beautiful example.
Online, we have Anne.
All right, am I here?
You are.
Thank you so much for this very profound insight into our relationship with the living earth. I really appreciate it, Lama Liz. Thank you. I just wanted to add to this reflection on wonder and awe that one of my favorite scientists, E.O. Wilson, he said that he thinks there are as many as 20 million life forms on this earth, and that we have named maybe 1 million of them. And out of that million, we have investigated maybe 100,000 of them. So actually, there's a lot of undiscovered life on this planet. And what you've been sharing with us reminds me of that in some kind of, practical way.
Right.
There's a lot of unknown, undiscovered life in this world. Millions and millions and millions of life forms that we don't know about yet.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And to practice reception, reverence, as you said, is so inspiring. Thank you. I'm going to go out for a walk this morning by one of our lakes. It's raining, and I'm going to take that with me.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
The amount that we don't know compared to what we know. Yeah. Anyone else here? Yeah. Tamara.
I'm the other Tamara in the room.
Can you guys hear that okay? Can you hear the microphone?
Can you hear me?
I just wondered if we need to turn it up a little bit.
I was just saying I'm the other Tamara in the room. I loved what you taught today, and it brought back to mind something when I was first learning to meditate, and like you read in a book that you sit down with your breath, and at the time I lived in a triple decker in Brighton, so that my porch was up on the level with the trees. And of course, that we breathe out oxygen, and we breathe in oxygen and out carbon dioxide, and the trees do the opposite. So I got it into my head, because I wasn't in the place where I could meditate without thinking, that's what was happening with me and the trees. And something happened that was really scary for me at that time, that became that sense of breathing with the trees blew me away, and I didn't know what that was at that time, but it was really powerful. And that what you said today about reverence, that really sits, like that's what happened. It was this amazing experience of unity.
Right.
And to this day, it's like almost scary to try to enter into that relationship, because it's so powerful, right? But I think it's probably a good practice.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Tamara. Yeah, and you're tuning into the etymology of the word that means to be afraid of. That there's something that's so beyond the little self that we go, oh my goodness. Yeah, thank you.
Is there anybody on Zoom?
Online, we have Chris.
Good morning.
Hello, darling.
Hello, dear. All of you there at Wonderwell, and all of you at home. Especially when I had hoped to be at Wonderwell, but I have a cold, and so I stayed home to avoid sharing my germs with all of you. But Liz, I don't know what to say. This woman continues to amaze me. I'm married to her for 20 years. Your expressions, you're bringing forth really, I was just really profoundly struck this morning, and I mean, the thing, you know, like many of you know, I've been going through a lot lately, a lot of panic attacks and anxiety and feeling out of control and wondering what's happening and had a lot of fear, but an incredible sense that there's something that's happening to me or through me, and I'm not doing it. Like this is what I want to express. That it's doing me. You know, the breath is breathing me. My emotional phenomena, my mental states. I'm not in control here. I mean, I have some level of, you know, being able to show up and be present for it and witness it and try to, but reverence, a sense that there really is something incredible happening on this planet right now. People are waking up. There is waking up happening, and this NDF community is a part of that, and we're all part of that. And it may feel really uncomfortable sometimes. It may be very challenging sometimes, but it's something that if we open to it, especially when it's difficult, it really has the potential to transform us and bring something beautiful. And thanks, darling. You're amazing.
That's my husband. Thank you so much, dear. It's beautiful. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
And another online, if there isn't somebody in the room, we've got, I apologize if I mispronounced.
We do have someone in the room, but then we'll come back.
Okay.
So I too have had the experience on a retreat in nature where it's just like suddenly the boundary just completely dissolves and you're like looking at grass in a way that you've never looked at grass and feel wind. And I love that sense of awe. And I love the word reverence because I am really struggling with the word devotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know why I struggle so hard with devotion. But when you say reverence towards awe, and I try to switch it with devotion towards awe, which is something I feel like I should feel because I love the sensation so much. And I'm thinking about, you know, it's like, oh, it's got to be a great practice. But it's interesting that the wording can be such a divisive kind of separator in a weird way, that reverence towards something feels different than devotion, but I don't know, I guess judging mind is like, it should be the same, or maybe it's the next level. So I'm curious on your thoughts.
Well, you know, for a while I was just switching those words also, and because I felt like what was being pointed towards with devotion was what I would call reverence. And the word devotion is so laden down with a lot of baggage, especially in Buddhist traditions and other spiritual traditions. And I just kept trying to think of another way to express the same state of open receptivity and humility and awe that allows us to be fully receptive. And reverence just feels, to me, more evocative that way. So, I mean, that's kind of, yeah, I'm also in that exploring of these terms and how they can either open or close us down, depending on, you know, what the word is associated with. So, thank you. And then from Zoom,
We have Lady, I believe.
Hi. It's Lady.
Lady. Hi, Lady.
Hi. Chris, thanks for sending the link. This was such an incredible talk. It's so awesome to hear you speak today. And yeah, I loved what you said. That everyone keeps saying again, but like, yeah, about the breath doing you, and that sort of just the linguistic exchange there is so important. And at some point we'll probably get sick of saying it that way, and we'll say it another way, but it has that freshness of the breath is doing you, and the way you said the trees are including you is such a nice way to say it. And I wanted to ask you, like, I feel like over the past year, kind of my little thing, and I don't know, maybe we've even talked about it, but like, so you have these moments of reverence. I feel like, as an artist as well, it's like, that's my sort of daily bread is that. And in a way, it's almost like, I feel like what I come to is these moments of deep reverence, whether it's in meditation or out in the woods or in the studio or wherever I find that. And then, but then I've started to notice that my sort of conceptual mind will come in and then sort of examine that. It'll like, so I was curious, I wanted to hear you sort of speak about what you think about like these sort of deep moments of reverence, sort of feeling that, but then how almost like a crossfade back into the world that we of logic and the da 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 and the communications with people and sort of, yeah, just
Yeah.
how to
No, that's
crossfade.
great. That's a great question. It's true. Like we're, especially in a real moment of opening and awe and wonder, then all of a sudden the thinking mind just kind of jumps back in and wants to interpret and wants to kind of explore even more and wants to comment on our experience. This is just the usual habit pattern of the mind, that we're used to that process. We have an experience, and almost right away on the heels of it, we jump into categorizing, explaining, talking to ourselves about it. And I'm not sure that there's not a problem with that per se. I mean, in a way, it's what allows the expression of that experience in the world. And at the same time, I think we can cultivate a deeper capacity to stay in that state of openness and reverence. And maybe it's just a practice of reminding ourselves again and again to just reach that end of the out breath and let go. Just keep letting go. It's all about letting go of that mind that wants to continuously comment, generate, fabricate, interpret, etc. Just letting it go and trusting that if there's something of key importance, like Lighty, you're a painter, and if what's going to come through you is a vision of some form that you're going to be able to capture, that's going to happen. And the more you or any of us returns to that openness, the more we're continuing to allow those fields of energy to inform how we express what we experience, whether it's through writing, it's through painting, it's through dancing, it's through conversation. But letting more and more the sense of interrelatedness and awe inform our communication, inform our action, inform our way of being. So thank you. I mean, I'm not sure that's a full answer, but it's at least a partial answer. And, because, how do we bring this back into the world? I mean, we are the world. And there's also this kind of other level of like dealing with the challenges that are out there. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah. Thank you for that talk. Wonderful teaching, wonderful presence as well. The high side of wonderful, I think. And you probably couldn't see it, but any of us who looked over your right shoulder out the window could see that as the wind rustled those leaves in that yellow oak, that tree was applauding.
Oh. They're just waiting for us to come back to them. Yeah.
They are. This is my first visit, and Friday night I opened a book of poetry. And if I may, read a stanza from one that really struck me.
Please.
It's a woman looking at a tree out her window. She closes by saying, "And yet somehow that maple tree knew me We talked and talked until I became birched and oaked, crab-appled, and cherried, drunk with all the treeness I'd forgotten. My God, to think I could bud, even blossom.
Oh, I think we stop there. That's just perfect. Thank you so much, Steve. That's really great. Who wrote that? Robin, is it Kimmer? Okay, anyway, never mind. Thank you, though. That was great. You want to say something else, Tamara? Okay, let Tamara, and then we really will. Yeah.
On behalf of science,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So the science is waking up to these interactions with the world. And I want to mention it because it's okay to be on the scientific and spiritual path.
Oh, yeah.
So in medicine, there is a part of medicine that's called forest bathing.
Right.
And started in Japan, and medical students are taught by Dr. Lee and the rest how to actually walk through the forest in order to bring the nature to the patient here. So there is a little book that's called Forest Bathing, and it's just the most beautiful way of bringing science into the spirituality and offering patients a healing method that is not only a prescription of chemotherapy, but actually going to the forest and be healed there, which I would very highly recommend. It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Forest bathing. Absolutely. And I mean, I certainly wasn't trying to say anything negative about science. We've learned so much that way. It's just sometimes that paradigm, does separate, tends to separate more than unite. But I think you're right that there's now there's a more and more of a intersection that we're seeing between what we know from our experience and what science is now able to show from that perspective. So. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for coming. And before I want to do one final little dedication of merit for our time together. And rather than reading the prayer in our book, which we often do, I would want to invite everyone to just take a moment of silence and to formulate your own dedication of merit so that any benefit that you feel has come to you from our time together, you are offering out into as a prayer of healing, of love, of connection. It could be to the whole world. It could be to someone you know who really needs some extra care and love. But each of us individually formulating your own little internal prayer, and then having a sense of just releasing that energy out into the world. So we'll take a moment here just in silence, and I'll ring the gong when we're done. forward to seeing you all next time. And please do stay for lunch if you can here. And everyone else, please enjoy the rest of your day.